Hi, and welcome back. Our first real snow day of 2023. And I was telling a little story about, as a child, my daughter one morning said, "What are snowflies?" Excuse me? She said, "What are snowflies?" You and Mom were talking about being safe on the road when the snow flies. And it's great to know that people have different perspectives of the world, that people can see a little bit of perhaps humor in life, or as a child looks at the world, they can bring so much joy to everyone else around them. And I got to say, I get a lot of joy from the work that my colleague, Katy Jean, does with SaltWire. Sinatra, the Mob, and an Atlantic Canadian. This was about the Rolling Stones exhibit. Katy Jean, unzipped and up close with the Stones. Owls don't give a hoot. All of this to say Katy Jean is here to talk to us about a story that she's working on. Katy Jean, so nice to see you again.
Hi, nice to see you.
I have to ask about your journey to get to the SaltWire Network. How did that happen?
About 100,000 tweets is how I got to SaltWire. Just really covering COVID and interacting with people and getting involved with, community and local stories. And I caught the attention of Colin Chisholm actually first, and I went to the Dartmouth Wire. And the Dartmouth Wire, unfortunately, was discontinued. And then I went freelance to the Nova Scotian and the Chronicle Herald. And now I'm SaltWire. So I still do the Nova Scotian, but I get a little bit more space to move around now.
Katy with a Y, not IE. That's actually your Twitter handle, right?
That is. Thank you for getting it. I've actually had I've actually had mail addressed to Katy Naughty. And so people think my last name is Notie. And I'm like, no, it's Katy, not IE. But I wasn't thinking when I made the handle that I would have more than 50 followers. So that's fine.
And this journey that's brought you to the stories of our community. You were telling me earlier this week that there was a story that you were working on that's about to be published that really it's a bizarre journey. So tell me a little bit about, first of all, where the story idea came from before we talk about what it is.
Well, actually, it was from Twitter. A man named Chad contacted me, and he said that he had headstones that he found in his backyard. And he sent me some photos, and immediately I was intrigued. I love history, and I love cemeteries, and I love a mystery. And so he was like, "Would you like to write about it?" And I said, "Of course I would." I was immediately invested. And so we met up and we kind of talked about the headstones, and we figured out at least some of them were from Fort Massey Cemetery, the Veterans Cemetery in Halifax. Now, what's weird is they're very large stones, and again, the cemetery is Halifax, Queen Street, South Street, and he's in Cow Bay, a little far away. And so we were trying to figure out how these headstones got to his backyard, and if they were all from the same cemetery. Is kind of where we started. We didn't know if these were just random headstones. So I went to his property to actually see the headstones, because I wasn't really getting how there's just headstones in someone's backyard. Well, and he invited... Sorry,
no, not to interrupt, but yeah, when you first started to tell me about this, I'm thinking, okay, there are all kinds of old graveyards across Nova Scotia, and maybe these are just old headstones in place, marking graves in somebody's backyard in rural Nova Scotia, but that's not at all.
No, and also him being from Cow Bay, I thought there might be some association to the former Poor Farm that's on Bissett, because they kind of intersect. So I was like, you know what? A lot of those got cleared out. Maybe he has a couple of those. Maybe it was just a stone cutter that had reject stones. We really didn't know. So I went to his property, and I went at night because he said you could see the names easier with the flashlight kind of creating shadows. So I go at night, and I've never been to the property before. I've met this man on Twitter, and it's pitch black out, and he hands me a flashlight and starts walking me into the woods. And I'm like, I hope he was all very nice. He had his wife Marianne was also very nice, but I for a second thought I'm going to look at headstones. But we went into this tree area that he has on his property, and my flashlight, you could see something, it looked like a former rock wall. But once my eyes adjusted, I noticed they were headstones, like complete headstones. And there's just an overwhelming amount of them. So I started writing some of the names down to try to figure out where they came from. Are they all from Fort Massey? Are they not? So I'm looking at these headstones, and he's like, okay, well, let's go to the second mound of headstones. I was like, what? So we go around, and there's more headstones, and they're scattered even on his property. He's recently moved there, so the frost and the mush are kind of bringing these headstones up, and we don't know how long they've been there. But the names I did get, I have connected them all to Fort Massey. They are confirmed to be from Fort Massey. Luckily, with that cemetery, somebody at some point surveyed it, and all the names are in a searchable database, which is amazing. But you can also find the plots on that. So I was able to find where these headstones were supposed to be, because on the website it says that they're unmarked, but they're only unmarked because they're in some guy's backyard in Calais. So it's really weird.
It's an amazing story. And as you say, this property owner just recently came into this property, so that they didn't have any historical connection to it. And there was nothing when they bought the property about a disclosure that said anything to, like, one person might jump to, well, somehow maybe that was just infill. Maybe it was just somebody did that to kind of fill up a swamp. But why would they use headstones, especially from a late 19th century graveyard?
Yeah, and the thing is, like, some are deteriorated. Some are, like, can fit in the size of my hand, smashed. But some are in excellent shape. There's one that's a gravestone for sappers, and it looks like it was just etched. It's a granite. It's still smooth. It's very easy to read. And so I could maybe understand a caretaker, someone taking broken stones, I don't know, making a retaining wall, or he wanted a nice stone path, whatever. Recycling's good. But for stones that you can actually read, I couldn't figure out why they could be removed. So then I went on an adventure because I needed to know. I was very invested in the story, and I was also talking to the homeowner a lot and just like jack their story and run with it. But the first person I went to was Craig Ferguson, who wrote the book Dead in Halifax and has the Twitter handle the same, because he's kind of chronicled Halifax's cemetery. So I went to him first. I was like, have you ever heard of this happening? And he said, perhaps they were supposed to be replaced, or they are replaced, or, somebody just took them, whatever. But we were speaking, and we would come up with a theory, and then something would come up but no, that can't be. So after him, I went to my friend Keith Elliott, who actually makes headstones. And I said, have you ever heard of this? And he had the theory too that maybe they were reject stones, practice stones, maybe there was a fauns around or something. But then when we figured out they were from Fort Massey, he really told me about how much they would weigh. And it's obvious, to get them from Fort Massey to this property, you would have needed equipment. These couldn't have just been chucked on the back of a pickup truck. Like, there's one stone on the property that Chad tried to move with his four-wheeler that can haul 3,000 pounds, and it didn't move. So there's some significantly large stones there. From there, when I couldn't figure out his theories, I went to Jonathan Fowler of the archaeology department of SMU, because I had heard of him doing the Acadian graves.
Right.
And so I asked him, do you know why this may be happening? Because SMU is very close. There could have been some involvement at a point. And he was as interested as me, but he didn't know either. But he was able to give me aerial photographs of the cemetery, which was very helpful. One was from 1921, and you can see Fort Massey's, like, there's a lot of stones there. You can also see it's not really, they didn't have sod then, it was just dirt, and it was a graveyard. but you can see it's packed with stones. Then he has an aerial photograph from 1963 where a significant amount of stones are gone. I think I can spot one, possibly, that's in the Cow Bay area, but they're gone. And it seems in current day, some of those were replaced, but not the ones that we have.
All of this, what an intriguing mystery. We all know that the history of Halifax, there were buildings erected on what were burial grounds at a time, like the old library, but people knew about it. And
Yeah.
The theories, somebody was going to turn the property into something, they cleared it to put a building up, but there's no record of that, nothing that would put you down that path, because there's nothing there now. Where the grave markers were, those graves still are there, right?
Yeah, and I had also gone to Veterans Affairs when I couldn't figure out everything. I honestly, I didn't want to bother them, but when I had all the information I went to Veterans Affairs and I said, "Hey, we have veterans stones. Do you know why they're there and why they weren't replaced?" And they have no record of the stones going. But like you said, no, they weren't moved for any purpose. The graveyard's been intact since before 1800s. I think it's one of the original ones, but those stones would be long gone, and they're not ours, or they're not mine, theirs. But I had a theory that the stones that were there were probably close to the road or close to a pathway, high traffic areas, things get knocked over. That made sense to me. And one stone is from right on Queen Street. So it's like, that can happen, especially with their retaining wall, like it could have fallen. And one is from right on a pathway. But the others aren't. Actually, the one that's in really good shape is about 3 plots up and 3 plots in on land. So that's the one that puzzles me the most, is the one that's in fantastic shape. It wasn't close to a pathway. It has no significant damage that I can see on it, although some of it's still sunk in the ground. But yeah, no, it wasn't moved for development. And I went there this week to kind of map out where these would actually be, and also I would say hi to them. But yeah, no, they're just gone, and there's no evidence of it. And I must have looked crazy. This man was like walking through the cemetery, and I was like looking at my phone and trying to like line up from things that are there, like the marked graves, and I would like kind of count my steps over to where the next plausible plot would be where my headstone belonged. And I was like measuring with my feet, 6 feet and things like that. But yeah, I went and I just like stopped and I made sure to say hello to them, because there's no one knows they're there now. No one knows their name. The other ones, they may not always have visitors, but a name might catch someone's eye and they're thought about for a second. But these people, there's nothing for people to think about to see them. They're a empty plot to a regular eye.
And I'm sure Craig would tell you that the historical importance of headstones is for research and for people to make that connection from the present to their past. And it's fascinating. It's a fascinating story, and it's about to be in the paper. It's about to be published. It'll be online. And the hive mind. I know a lot of folks will go on Twitter and go, "Hey, Twitterverse, tell me a little bit more if you know anything about such and such," or even, whether they're trying to buy a car, or whether pizza deserves pineapple or not. Right. So I think you may be looking to see if someone might be able to add to this story. Yeah.
So what actually happens with the stones, that's not really where Chad and his wife Marianne are at right now. We really, both, all of us, want to just know, firstly, how they got there and why they weren't possibly replaced. Just because it is really weird, because we don't know what year the stones were taken. So if you think if they were taken 20 years ago, the bridge is there, dump trucks, excavation, easily accessible. But the most recent stone we can read is 1929. So if those were taken before the bridges, then they were either hauled all around Bedford into Cow Bay, which that's a significant amount of space to travel, or they went on a boat. But we don't know. So we're really just trying to figure out how they got there, firstly, and why they got there. So did somebody work for the excavation company and say, yeah, bring them to me? And then this is what happens with all the theories. And then why did you take the ones that were in good shape? So that's kind of what we're trying to figure out right now. And yes, if anyone has any information, please tweet me or email me at katy.jean@saltwire.com, because we want to know. We've been racking our brains trying to figure this out.
It is quite a tale. I mean, there's someone somewhere that has to have some kind of memory or recollection of a story about that.
Right. And I really am hoping that it's just some guy named Larry that says, yeah, I remember my dad hauling those home. Like, I hope it's that simple. Like, I hope there isn't like a huge other story to this. I hope it's not something absolutely crazy. I would love to write about it if it were, but I'm hoping someone just emails me and says, yeah, my dad did that. That would just be great. But then we have somewhere to start.
Well, the stories are always fascinating. And Katy Jean, I can tell you have a passion for this, that you love what you do. And I think that comes through in spades. People are certainly, telling you how much they love the stories that you're writing. So keep up with the great work. And I hope this mystery is solved, not just for you, but for everyone else who has perhaps been captured by this story about headstones that disappeared from a cemetery to end up somewhere in Cow Bay. Yeah. I think it'll definitely get some interest, and I hope, again, someone knows something, or someone knows how to find something on it. But thank you. There might be a whole podcast series in there somewhere. She is SaltWire's Katy Jean, and she's been telling us about her story that is online now that you can read about. Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.